site where you're trying to programmatically access styles, but you're dependent on the browser's computation of all the styles, and you may not be exactly sure what applied to at the end, and get computed style gives you that ability. This next example just goes through and shows you some of the different methods that are available through DOM style. This is an interesting way of just kind of playing around with borders and different background colors. And it can show you how there are many, many different ways of doing exactly the same thing. But all of these work interoperably across browsers, and it gives you the freedom to figure out in your site which method works best for you. This last one is a t-shirt designer. So this demo uses a few different technologies. First of all, the page is served as XHTML, so it takes advantage of namespaces in a few different places. So this is my color picker. You'll see I have a color picker element where I've defined a widget's namespace. Up here I have a t-shirt name, using a t-shirt namespace and an instructions element. And this is that example of I've built a color picker, I've built some sort of widget or control in one place that I want to easily transfer around to multiple sites. And you can see this one is styled with using CSS3 namespaces. So that W and the vertical bar is saying that selector, that rule applies in that namespace. And at the moment, the dev tools don't show you the namespace definition. But if you open up the source, you'll see like a namespace rule that defines the namespace for those elements. So here you can see that for the color swatch, I'm using rounded corners, opacity. If I click on here, you can see I can pick a few different colors, play around. Now, this site also uses SVG. So this gives me a little t-shirt editor, and I can do my own little version of kindergarten art and build my own t-shirt. And this DOM viewer on the right, again, shows you the live view. So here are all the polylines that I've created just by moving it with my mouse on this t-shirt. And remember, this SVG is markup. It's programmable graphics. This is an image file. I can keep editing it. It also means you can easily save it and move it around. So you can choose save, and this is the SVG that I've just generated. Now I can take this SVG, save it into a file, and open up in anything that supports SVG. And in fact, and this is my cooking show moment where I pull the thing out of the oven that I put in earlier. I have my t-shirt that I drew earlier. It's amazing how long it took me to make it look even that good, so please be gentle. All right. I think that is the end of those demos. So to wrap up, I just kind of want to give you an overview of what's available today in the platform preview versus what's coming, where things are implementation currently is incomplete, versus where it will be in future releases of the platform preview. Again, on the markup side, inline SVG and HTML and XHTML, there's definitely additional work that we need to do within SVG and HTML. That's also an area that we'd love to get your testing and your feedback and your input on. XHTML, you'll notice a few different things that aren't quite all lined up there, but I'd say a vast majority of that is all working. CSS3 selectors and namespaces are available today and going. We have the large parts of DOM core events and style. One thing you'll notice about DOM events in particular is that we have all the main infrastructure and all the APIs working and a set of events. We don't have all the events working yet. So those are things that as you play around with the platform preview, you'll notice those. And this is exactly why that what we want you guys to do with the platform preview is try it out. You maybe take some of your existing content that uses these features, see how they work. But it's not time to go do compatibility testing or update sites or anything based on the behavior you find in here. And then DOM range also available, as well as those selection APIs defined in HTML5. To kind of wrap this up on the same markup side, there are really three main things that we're doing in Internet Explorer 9 to make this a reality, or get as closer than we've ever been before. And the first thing is making sure that I9 implements the set of features and the functionality that you just have to use and you depend on every single day. And that's where we started with that data. The second thing is saying that anytime we add a new feature, anytime we go looking for new functionality, we build it in an interoperable way. We build it with interoperability in mind. That's where you see all the work that Ted's going to talk about later coming from CSS3 and from SVG and from HTML5. And finally, we're engaging with the W3C and with the standards bodies to make sure that on these edges, where you will always have some differences, those converge and they converge quickly. And a lot of that is both just working and participating in the working groups, as well as contributing test cases, which we think is just critical to making sure that you and the browsers really do interpret markup in the same way. Now, those are those first three things. The last thing I have is, this is kind of our ask of you guys. And there's a session in detail on this tomorrow on writing cross-browser sites. And it talks about our recommended best practices for how to do browser detection and fallback. So we want to make sure that when we go build these features and they get them in Internet Explorer 9, it comes out, that your sites that maybe already take advantage of some of these in other browsers, take advantage of them in IE9, rather than running the old code that maybe is written for IE7 through IE9. Because that's when you end up with compatibility problems. That's when you do things like compatibility view lists and compatibility view buttons. And we want to try and minimize the need for any of that. So there's a great session tomorrow on kind of best practices and tips and tricks. And really just ask for your help there. If you can't make it to this session, we're going to put a blog post of all that content up on the IE blog in the next week or two. So look for that. Thank you.
Okay. Well, John, thank you. Let's go fast through some of the graphic stuff because I want to show my demos too because they're fun. Well, we said before, we believe rich graphics are really a cornerstone of HTML5, and we need to do those with GPU acceleration. We've seen a few of these things in Dean's keynote. Again, the most requested graphical features from web developers through various surveys over the last couple of years have been opacity control and alpha with it as well, RGBA. By the way, you really don't want to confuse those two. If you have just a flat background that you want some transparency, you're much better off using RGBA than opacity. Just the way the spec of opacity is, it requires that the element in its entire child tree be rendered off screen and then blitted with opacity onto the display. Now again, when it's all inside the GPU, that's not such a problem. But if all you want is a tinted background, you're much better off using RGBA to implement that. Just a kind of performance side point. CSS backgrounds and borders. Of course, round corners of the border radius property, highly recommended. Multiple background images, that's actually not implemented in the current, or in the first platform preview, but will be in the future. And box shadow, similarly, is also a feature we are doing, not implemented in the first platform preview. Enhanced image support. Well, we'll just go to a demo here because it's really hard to explain, but there are, support for color profiles, and if you work on a Mac in Safari, you have great support for that today. If you're on Windows browsers, it's a little bit less consistent. We think it's important, so we've done that. The new JPEG XR format, really the payback there